in the second half. What do you think? Was there anything different as far as like what you saw from the Spurs that they did differently in the second half compared to the first half?
I mean, it was. I mean, they just didn't make their shots. Honestly, like I feel like it's simple to say that, but when you have, I think I saw they had like 14 made threes in the first half, which was
Yeah, broke a
also a
record.
record.
Yeah,
And then in the second half, essentially they couldn't make anything, and it was like I don't know if they just felt because of the lead they had built up that they didn't have to kind of keep their foot on the gas. And maybe they thought, it's okay if we start off a little slow. We just got to get stops defensively to try to offset that. But it was, yeah, I mean, for their offense, obviously, it was just not being able to hit their shots. And then defensively, I think they were just letting guys like Anunoby and Brunson hit too many, I think, timely shots that really, especially being in the Garden too, like
yeah,
making it harder than it is for having that crowd be against you. Um, but yeah, I there's obviously certain plays in the second half that probably like Fox at the very end of the game, um, and stuff like that. I know I've seen stuff around about Wemby, saying that he was getting in Mitchell Robinson's head and that kind of backfired on him. So, but like when it comes down to the actual game, I think it was just they kind of got a little too complacent and comfortable with where they were at and needed to lock in and hit some of those shots more. I mean, Champagny 33 minutes, and he only went 1 for 7 from three. I think that's a guy who they've been kind of relying on all playoffs to make those open shots. And I know like Wemby too, I think he at halftime had like 20 or something and he finished with 24
yeah,
or going into the fourth quarter or something like that. He had like 22 and it was just like they weren't able to get him in the spots he needed to be to make, and he wasn't making any shots himself. So, it's the Spurs are definitely going to be looking back at this going into next season, whether they win or lose. But I think for a lot of it too is on Mitch Johnson. I think there was some times when you probably could have called timeout during those runs that the Knicks were having to try to calm him down a little bit, set up a nice play. And it just wasn't really, happening for him. So it's unfortunate on that standpoint. But in terms of like the Knicks, like that's the kind of mentality I think Mike Brown has been able to install in these guys of like, we're never out of this. I know too, it's probably the players as well. Brunson feels like he's never out of any game hard. Um, and it is just impressive to see them kind of fight back like they did, and also do it with some of their bench guys out on the floor there too. And it wasn't just the main starting five. So I like seeing that. I think going into next game, there's going to be some changes hopefully for the Spurs in terms of how they game plan down the stretch. But for the most part too, it's just like they really gotta in those key situations. You can tell that they're just not as experienced and not as poised as the Knicks were. Even though, yeah, none of these Knicks players have really been in the finals either. But it just seems like they knew how to kind of carry themselves out of that hole
yeah.
versus Spurs.